Yeah, got a very special guest today. Could you do me a favor and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Clint, Clint Terrell. Yeah,
But much love. Thank you for joining us today. And you know what? What I like to do is I like to get into the story of people. You know what I mean? I like to know what happened from the beginning. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, how was your life in your younger years?
um, so let's see. So I grew up in kind of like a kind of a rural area, man, like a real small town, like up in the mountains, kind of up like close to Lake Tahoe up there. And so like yeah, I was born in Modesto. My parents are from the Bay Area. I don't really remember too much of Modesto, but I grew up there. You know what I mean? We lived in a real small. It was basically like a studio apartment, like on the side of a hill, out in the middle of
Okay.
nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Like there was no foundation under the house. Like the whole like
Oh
little
shit.
shack, it was like propped up on like car jacks and cinder blocks for a really long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then my dad, he ended up building onto it a little bit. He built like it was like a studio apartment, and then he built on like a living room and like a little loft, you know. But even that was like all propped up on car, and he put like these big, like nice, like sunburst windows in it. But they
Yeah.
couldn't afford the glass because the glass was real expensive to put in these big, nice windows. So we just had like plastic tarps and shit like stapled up inside the windows and shit. You know what I mean? And in the wintertime when it would be storming, that the plastic would be the wind would like break the plastic and rain would be like pouring in the house. It was
Damn.
crazy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, we just didn't really have a lot, you know, and that's how it started. We lived way out there in the cuts, you know. And yeah, and anyway, so yeah, so you know, and aside from that, you know what I mean, aside from just, you know, kind of living like that, you know, my dad, he was still like working. I think he was still like kind of commuting to Modesto because he was in the carpenters unit. So he would like drive all the way to Modesto, like, you know what I mean, down to the valley, like every day to go work and shit. But him and my mom were just always fighting a lot of domestic violence and stuff, you know what I mean?
Mm.
A lot of like, you know, just every night, like something like something extreme, like every night. You mean like my mom? I remember one time, like I think my mom like stabbed my dad with like a kitchen
Oh
knife. You know
shit.
what I mean? In the
Yeah.
arm or something like that. My dad, you know, would slap her. You know, coffee pots flying through the window. My dad punching my mom, trying to lock him out of the house, and him like punching holes in the glass and cutting his hand. And cops showing up and dragging him off to jail. You know what I mean? Just like every night, screaming, yelling. You know what I mean? Just all that, like every night. You know what I mean? And
Let,
so
let me
he ended
let
up.
me ask, was there alcohol, or like was there alcohol abuse in the house? Was that what led to that? Because like on a nightly basis I would assume there's something that would kind of trigger that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a lot of, you know what I mean, drug use and alcohol. You know what I mean. Even though my parents wouldn't admit it, you know what I mean, if they saw this interview and like heard me talk about it, they would probably get like upset and be like, "Oh, well, we never," you know what I mean, blah blah. But yeah, you know, but for sure there was a lot of that, a lot of partying and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then my dad, he ended up splitting, you know what I mean? He ended up taking off. Like they got divorced before I started school, before I started kindergarten, they split up because they were just like fighting like all the time, like just crazy, bro. I remember like one time I think my mom tried to like jump out of the car when they were still driving. They were screaming my dad, like threatening to run her
Yeah.
over, just like everything. The cops come in, put me in the back of the car, taking my, you know what I mean, not really knowing what to do with me, you know what I mean? It just like, yeah, all the time they were just fighting like every. That's all I remember. That's, like my earliest years, I don't remember anything. I don't remember like birthday parties or I don't remember any. All I remember is my parents just like trying to kill each other, man. Like
Just the trauma and shit.
just like knock down, drag out fights like every night. You know what I mean?
How
And
did
so
that feel for you, being so young, you know, having the when it's raining, having to worry about like rain coming in the house, also having to worry about if your parents are going to fight, having to worry about where what's going to happen to you. How did that feel as a child, having all that pressure on you?
hey, you know what? Like at the time, you know what I mean? I think, you know, looking back, I probably felt like it was normal. I didn't really know anything else. You know what I mean? I didn't know how other people were living, you know what I mean? I thought that's what it was, you know what I mean? I thought that's just was just life, you know what I mean? But I think like I know that it definitely did have like a negative impact on me, you know, because I think kind of how I dealt with that. So I didn't have any siblings at the time either. It was just me and them, you know what I mean? And so I didn't really have anybody to like I didn't have any allies really, you know. So I think I kind of just withdrew into myself when that shit would happen. I would just go find a spot and just chill and just like act like it and just kind of try to ignore it and
Mm.
act like it wasn't happening. You know what I mean? So I think I found a way to kind of just like kind of withdraw into myself a little bit.
Way to hide
Which
your emotions.
yeah, kind of yeah, you know. And so when I started going to school, you know, I think at first I was kind of like quiet and like, you know, shy, but I found out real quick how to get attention. You know what I mean? I found out that, you know, if I could be disruptive and like make people laugh, you know, I think that was like kind of my way of like, you know, of expressing myself a little bit, you know what I mean? And it felt good, you know what I mean? It felt, that was like somewhere where it wasn't like I didn't have to like just shut up and hide in the corner. I could like, you know, be out in the open and be in the spotlight kind of, you know what I mean?
It's
And
you were probably kind of tired of hiding in the corner.
yeah,
Maybe
you know, yeah, for
subconsciously.
sure. You know, it was like school was definitely an outlet. Being around other kids, like, you know, I liked school for that reason. You know what I mean? I liked it was just kind of an escape from like my home life, I think, you know, at first. But anyways, yeah, you know, so like my dad, he ended up taking off. I mean, they ended up splitting up. He like, man, he like took the car. He like went to Montana or
Oh
Idaho. I don't
shit.
even know. I don't even know where he went, but he went like out of state. He went like up north, and I think that's where he wanted to go originally. I mean, like when they were moving out of Modesto, my dad wanted to like keep going north. He wanted to go to like, you know, like up to like Humboldt or like Oregon or like somewhere like, he wanted to get out of California. My mom, like, she's from like all our family is like in the Bay Area. You know what I mean? So she didn't want to go like that far. So anyways, you know, he took off. So like, yeah, man, for a minute, it was like me and my mom out there. I always like telling this story too, because everybody always laughs at this shit. But so my dad took the car, right? And like, yeah, our pipes would freeze in the wintertime and our pipes would break. We wouldn't have any running water. We'd be like boiling water on the stove and like to take a bath with, you know what I mean? All that, you know.
Damn.
But anyway, so my mom, like, you know, from what I heard, you know what I mean? I don't know if my mom exaggerated about this, but the story that I heard was that my mom called her biological dad, my grandpa, who I didn't really have much of a relationship with my whole life. But she called him and said, like, hey, his dad, my dad, you know, his name is Doyle, that he took the car, you know, we're out here, we don't have a vehicle, we can't get to the store. The closest store was like 2 miles away. We didn't have any neighbors, you know what
Damn.
I mean? And so the story is that he went to an auction in Fresno and bought a horse and had a horse delivered to us, right? Because my mom used to do barrel racing like back in the day, like in the fairs and stuff, you know what I mean? Like she was
Yeah.
a barrel, so my mom was like real good with like horse, like knew how to ride horses real good. So like the story is that my grandpa went and got a horse at an auction and sent it to us because we didn't have a car, man. And like I remember riding that horse, but I remember getting on that horse
Oh
and
shit.
like and riding down to the fucking little store to like get some milk and stuff, you know what I mean? With like my mom would like sit me in the front. You know, I was like 3 or 4 years old. She would like sit me in the front right there and be right in her lap kind of and ride that thing down to the store. And she would like ride it down to the bar and shit, you know what I mean? Like be drinking down there and all that, you know. I think she like took me to school on it a couple times, you know.
I'm
Um,
curious. At such a young age, were you embarrassed or were you like, this is badass?
Oh
That
no! Well,
horse.
you know, I think I thought it was cool first, but I did
Yeah.
think it was cool once I started going to school. You know, I remember like going to school and like a lot of people like making fun of me for that shit. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's
And
fucked up. Kids are assholes, man.
yeah, yeah. And so like I didn't tell that story for a long time because I was just super embarrassed about it, man. Like I'm just like a straight backwoods, you know what I mean? Hick, like you know what I mean? All that, you know. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, and then I think like animal control ended up getting called on us one because we didn't have anywhere to
Ah,
keep it. You know what I mean? And then we had some neighbors that were down the way, and they like let us like keep the horse like in their pasture. You know what I mean? But we would just have to like buy the food for it, and eventually I think they bought it from us, or they just like kind of took it off our hands for us, anyways. You know?
yeah.
But anyways, yeah, man. So that's how it was. You know what I mean? When I was growing up real young, and then yeah, going to school. You know, I was kind of like the class clown. You know what I mean? Like real early on, and just like you know not really going to school to learn, just going to school to like to be around some other kid, like you know what I mean, make friends, and you know what I mean, and just socialize. You know what I mean? That's what school was to me. I mean, I didn't really care about like what they were trying to teach us. You know what I mean? So I wasn't very like a very good student, but like I liked school for the social part of it, but I wasn't like a very good student. You know what I mean? Very early on.
And how long did it take for the like disruptive behavior and all that to spill onto to the streets?
So yeah, so like probably like so I think I got suspended for the first time like in fifth grade. You know what I mean? I think
Damn.
for like bringing a pocket knife to school or something like that. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so the other thing, right? The other thing I was gonna say, like how I think I kind of like gravitated towards that, you know what I mean? Like towards like really getting in trouble. So first, like I had to start working like at a really early age too. So we had a lot of vineyards and like a lot of like wine country out there, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think I remember like fourth grade, like the summer, like as soon as fourth grade was over, like the summer vacation, I had to start working out in these vineyards. With my mom, you know what I mean, and just picking grapes, pruning, running drip, like you know what I mean, just doing like agricultural work, you know what I mean, like super, like I was like 10 years old, I think, and I remember I was getting paid like $3 an hour, three twenty
Damn.
five,
Oh
$3.25
yeah,
an
that's
hour
how it
is what
was
I was
back then
getting,
though. Yeah.
but I was getting paid. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was like early '90s probably. It was like yeah, probably like 1994, 1995. Yeah, like 1995 probably. Um, and I remember like when I would get my checks, I had to give them straight to my mom. I couldn't even like keep my own money. I had to like just give my check to my mom, and she'd give like a little bit out, like $20 out of it or something like that. And I can go to something I want, but like I just had to turn my check straight over. And I remember that kind of being a moment when I was just like this is what I got to look forward to. You know what I mean? Like this is what my life is going to be. And my mom just always like driving that into me too. Like you got to work. You know what I mean? Like you got to
Yeah.
work and shit. And And the thing is too, like my mom though, you know what I mean? Like she kind of like lived more of like a street life than I did, you know what I mean? Like she grew up in like San Jose, you know what I mean? And like my, not my biological grandpa, but like her like kind of adopted dad, like who I call my grandpa, you know, who I grew up calling my grandpa. He like been to the pen, you know what I mean? He was all like tatted up, you know what I mean? He's kind of like old school biker type. I had one uncle that was like doing like 16 years in the feds for like a bunch of bank robberies and shit, you know what I mean?
Oh
I had
shit.
another uncle that was fighting a RICO case, you know what I mean? And I would like hear these stories that my mom would tell about my grandpa and like all this stuff that they used to do, you know what I mean? And I remember like hearing those stories and being like, that sounds better than like what we're, the old life sounds better than what we're doing right now. You know what I mean? Like I want to do that, you know? And I remember like kind of like identifying with that more and like, so, you know what I mean? And really kind of starting to seek that out, I think, you know?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons for that too is because you're over here busting your ass. You're not even keeping your check. And then
Yeah.
you hear like stories of these infamous characters. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And it's
exactly.
like it sounds glamorous, like, oh
Yeah.
shit. It's like, why the fuck am I busting my ass when I could become one of these guys?
Right. Yeah. So, I think like at a real, so like, yeah, like I started kind of, I mean, I was a little troublemaker, you know what I mean, all through it. So I think like in sixth grade, sixth or seventh grade, I got sent to a continuation school, which was like more in the town. It's like the little town. So we lived in this little town called Somerset, and it was like 40 miles outside of Placerville, and Placerville was like 40 miles from like Sacramento, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was kind of like on the way to Tahoe. So like the continuation school that I went to, there was a lot of kids that were like from Sacramento. There was like a group home there, you know what I mean? So like a lot of like kids, like group home kids from like Sacramento and like kids that are on probation and stuff like that. They would go to this continuation school, you know what I mean? And like, yeah, at first, man, like I wasn't very street smart, you know what I mean? So I tried doing a lot of stupid, you know what I mean? I learned a lot of lessons, you know what I mean? Trying to like
Yeah.
do little stupid stuff, you know what I mean? I think like one of the first things I thought I was going to do, I was going to start slinging, you know what I mean? But I didn't know anything about it. Like I had a hard time getting people to even sell me drugs, let alone get people to buy them from me.
Yeah.
I got my hand shook and my money took a couple times, you know what I mean?
Oh shit. Yeah.
And yeah, you know what I mean? So just doing a lot of stupid stuff, you know what I mean? But like really trying to like, you know what I mean? Trying really hard to like fit into that world, you know what I mean? And I think like one of the first times I got arrested, well, I think the first thing I think I got busted with some weed. I think you know what I mean the first time, but I think the first thing that got me sent to juvenile hall. So yeah, I went to a continuation school. You know what I mean. Some things happened. You know what I mean. I ended up going to a couple more public high school. I think, I finished my middle school at a continuation school, and then I started going to public high school. And the first thing I got arrested for, I think, was I went into a clothing store. You know what I mean. I went into like a clothing store, and I just filled up everything that I wanted. I just grabbed shirts, pants, and I had a big old like armful of stuff, and I just kind of like tried to walk out with it. And the manager saw me and called after me, and I ran around the corner of this little alley. And I had a friend that lived right up behind the store, so I just like ran straight to his house and went to his house, and we were kind of sorting out all the stuff, you know what I mean? And I like put on this big jacket, and I stuffed a bunch of the shirts and stuff that I took, and I left some stuff at his place, and I took off walking like an hour or so later, and I got hemmed up, you know what I mean? The cops pulled up, and then they searched me. They found like all this stuff still had like the price tags on it and stuff, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then they called the store. They had got the store manager had reported it, you know what I mean? And so like he came down, like ID'd me and all that. And they took me to the police station. They took me to juvenile hall, but I didn't actually have to do time. Then they just like took me down and like gave me a citation and made my mom come pick me up, you know? And I gave me a court date. And then like a few weeks went by, and I was like still going to school and stuff. And I was like kind of hooking up. I was hooking up shit for like people, you know what I mean? What like weed, whatever else, you know what I mean? Even like more harder drugs. By that time, I was already like kind of starting to get high, and I had gotten like told on for that. Like someone like told
Oh
on me that
shit.
I was like I wasn't like selling it myself, but I was like kind of middleman for people. My friend lived like down the street, and I would like get people's money and bring it and like hook them up, you know. And I was doing that, and somebody had reported me for that, I guess. So I showed up to school one day, and somebody came up to me and they're like, "Hey, is your last name, Trail, whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, that cop over there, he's looking for you. He's asking
Oh
questions about you.
fuck.
He wants to talk to you." And I was like, you know what I mean, already like on paranoid mode, you know what I mean. So I was like, "Fuck, I'm out," you know what I mean. And I took off from school, and I quit going to school for like a couple weeks, and then I had missed my court date for that, for stealing the clothes for the shoplifting or whatever, you know. And I got pulled over, you know what I mean? The cops recognized me, I had a bench warrant for that thing. And they were wanting to talk to me about, you know what I mean, how I was hooking people up and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Who was I getting my shit from, you know? And I was like, I'm not going to talk or whatever. They're like, "Well, you got a warrant, you know what I mean? We're going to take you down to juvenile hall if you don't start, fessing up and all this." And I was like, "Fuck it, man," you know? And so they took me to juvenile hall and booked me in. And they ended up charging me with a felony for the shoplifting thing, because I guess like the thing is, I don't know if it's still a law, but the thing was, it's like if you went into a store with money in your pocket and spontaneously stole something, then it was just a misdemeanor petty theft. But if you went into a store with no money in your pocket, that means you went in there with the intent to steal something, and that was a
Oh, that's
felony.
kind of fucked up. That's
And
kind
it
of
was
like
so it was second degree commercial burglary is what they got.
damn, that's fucked. That's kind of like harsher crimes for poor people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they gave me 90 days. I had to do 90 days in juvenile hall for that. That was my first little stint in juvenile hall. Um,
Damn, how was that for you?
you know what, man? Like juvenile hall was it it was just really boring, bro. You know what I mean? Like it was like in some ways it was worse than like adult time in some ways, you know what I mean? Like it was just there were just like no program, bro. Like no talking. You know what I mean? Like no talking in juvenile hall pretty much. You know what I mean? It's just like, you kind of wake up, they bring the cleaning supplies around, you gotta clean your cell out every morning. And then you go out to the chow hall for breakfast and you come back to your cell and you're down for like another hour or two until school starts. Go to school, like no talking, you're in your little cubicle, don't even look up, don't even lift your head up, you know what I mean, from your little desk. And then if you did, it would be a point, you get written up, sent back to your cell, whatever. And then and then go back to your cell, I think for like a bag lunch, eat your lunch in your cell or whatever, you know what I mean? And then back to school after like an hour. And it's just like in between just sitting in your cell, and then there would like be like day room, but like you just watch TV and you couldn't talk. You know what I mean?
Damn.
No talking to anybody, just like watch TV and just be quiet. The only place you could talk really and talk to people was when you're out in the yard. So you could like kind of have the option. You can like sit in and watch TV and just shut up, or like be out in the yard and like you like play basketball or handball, or like there was like one little space in the yard that was like designated for like walking. You know what I mean? You can just like kind of walk in circles with one of your homies or something and chop it up. And that's like the only time that you were like really allowed to like talk to people, you know what I mean? Like
That's
and
fucked up.
interact with people, And
Yeah.
it was really easy. You know what I mean? You weren't allowed to like people would like talk out their doors, sing out their doors, yell at the doors, and they would record you and monitor you and shit too. You know what I mean? So if they caught you, they would like come over your speaker and like tell you to shut up, and you could get put on lockdown. You know what I mean? And if you got put on lockdown, you only got like one hot meal a day, so they give you a bag lunch for breakfast. And you would miss breakfast basically. You know what I mean?
Damn, that's fucked up.
They give you a breakfast for like for breakfast and lunch, and then you can only get a hot meal for dinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like the ads say they would put you on this thing, like if you got in a fight or something like that, they put you on what they call SR3. It was like security risk level 3. They come and put like a little red sticker on your door. And it was the worst kind of solitary confinement, bro. I've been in the shoe. I've been in AdSay and Tracy and DVI. I was in the shoe and Tehachapi. I've been on level 4 prisons, you know what I'm saying? And like that was probably the worst. That was like the worst type of fucking solitary confinement I ever experienced, because they would take your bed away.
Oh fuck.
They would come to your cell like 7 o'clock in the morning, take your mattress, all your property, the only thing you could have was the clothes that you were wearing. If you had like an extra pair of pants or something, they would take that. And you can only have a Bible in your cell, unless like you were of a different religion. You know what I mean? Then you can have like religious material, basically. You know what I mean? And like you can only have one book. You know what I mean? Whatever it was, and that was it, bro. And they would just and they would come take all your property like at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then you couldn't go to school, so they would play these like educational tapes like over the speaker, right?
Yeah.
And so it would be like in 1492 Christopher Columbus, la 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 la, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they would just play this shit over the speaker in your cell, and you had to listen to it. And they come by and bring these little packets on carbon paper, and they would slip these and that was like your homework, and it would ask you questions about the recording that was on, and you'd have to like scratch in the answer with your fingernail because it was on carbon paper, but you weren't allowed to have a pencil. So like literally you had to scratch in the carbon paper the right answer, and it was all multiple choice and shit. And that was the program, that was the school that you did if you were on AdSeg,
That sounds like if you weren't crazy before you went there, that should make you crazy as hell.
Oh man, oh yeah, bro. And if you do more, you know what I mean? If you bang on your door, you act up, you try and get attention, they'll give you more time. That's another day.
Damn, fuck that.
Yeah, man. It was like, yeah, a super strict juvenile hall, man, and a small juvenile hall too. And so I got out of there, and I had to go to like a probation school, you know what I mean? And so like the school was like it was in the basement of juvenile hall actually.
Oh shit.
And so like the whole model is like if you got like enough trouble or enough write-ups, you know what I mean, or being disrespectful to the teacher, they could come in and violate you right
You
there.
go upstairs and
Come
shit.
into the class, yeah, exactly. Come in the classroom, handcuff you right there in class, and put you in the elevator and send you upstairs to juvenile hall, and they would book you in, and you would spend like a day or like 2 days in juvenile hall or like a weekend or something like that, you know what I mean? And they send you right back down the elevator in the same clothes you got arrested on to go to school again, you know what I mean?
Damn.
That was it was called track 2. And yeah, there was like a probation officer right there. They would like search you, wind you down, and dump out your backpack every time you went to school, So yeah, it's funny. Like you hear like the prison to school pipeline. Well, it was the prison to elevator, the school
God
to
damn.
the school to prison elevator. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, man. And so yeah, yeah. So after that, so I kind of like when I was at that school, I kind of became friends with this dude. He lived out on the so there's he lived out on this Miwok reservation, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was from Sacramento, and his older brother was from like a really like a well-known neighborhood in Sacramento, you know what I mean? Like, generations deep kind of neighborhood. And I started kicking it with them a lot, you know what I mean? And I was like, kind of like starting like going like, they would take me into their neighborhood and introduce me to some people, you know what I'm saying? Which was a lot different, you know what I mean? It was kind of awkward at first, you know what I mean? Especially being a white kid, you know what I mean? Like from the mountain, never really been in the city at all, you know what I mean? But yeah, I kind of started getting introduced to that world like that way, you know what I mean? And doing stuff with them, you know what I mean, going and hitting licks, what I mean, getting in street fight, whatever, you know what I mean, and just kind of tagging along, you know what I mean, with my homeboy and his older brother and shit, you know what I mean, and taking me to different spots and kind of showing me some different things, and we did a lot of stuff, man, and like I never got anyways, but so like yeah, and yeah, just a lot of heckling too, you know what I mean, for being white. Like saying, they would say all kinds of shit, you know what I mean? Like, don't feed the pilgrims, you know what I mean? You remember what happened last time we fed the pilgrims and like shit like
Damn.
this, and just like constantly with the heckling, you know what I mean? I had to like adjust to that culture and learn how to take that and you know what I mean, and say some smart ass shit back without like being disrespectful, like taking it too serious, like getting it, you know what I mean, to the point where you know what I mean, where people are getting disrespected and just kind of like adapted to that kind of culture. But anyway, so I ended up getting arrested again for truancy, bro. This is so I quit going to school. I mean, I would stay out there in the res. That was the one thing about the res is like the cops couldn't come out there, like probation officer, like they had to like call him before like they came out there because it was federal land, you know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
they had to, like if they were gonna come out there, they needed like a federal warrant to like go out there and to like to do anything, you know what I mean? And so like it was kind of a safe spot, you know what I mean? Like I just posted up out there, had all my clothes out there, would stay, you know what I mean? It was kind of cool. There wasn't a lot out there, bro. You know what I mean? Like people just had their trailers and stuff out there, and like a lot of people didn't even have like running water hooked up to their spots and
Oh
shit. You know what I
shit.
mean? But it was cool. Yeah, it was kind of fun. I mean, we had like a lot of big parties out there, bonfires. You know what I mean? Like playing music. Like people just had like the system that pop their trunk and like playing their car systems. You know what I mean? Just bumping. You know what I mean? And everybody had their headlights on and shit. And like big ass fires. You know what I mean? Like and just being noisy, getting drunk. You know what I mean? Whatever. And it was like it was fun. You know what I mean? It was some good times out there. And but anyways, yeah, so I ended up getting a probation violation for truancy. And so that was the other thing with the school too, right? It's like everybody's on probation there. And
Yeah.
so one of the things when you're on juvenile probation is you can't hang out with other people that are on probation. You know what I mean? And so like you could get violated
Yeah.
for hanging out with somebody on probation. So if somebody reported me and saying that they saw me, you know what I mean? It was probably like another cop or another PO or something that saw us hanging out together and reported that, oh, they're kicking it, you know what I mean? And so I got like called in. I had to go take a piss test. I failed that, like came back dirty for marijuana. And so they violated me for a truancy, a dirty marijuana test, and like violating the terms of association and of probation or something like that. And I was supposed to, so I got arrested again for that, for just a violation, petty ass violation. Um, and I was supposed to do 30 days in juvenile hall and then 30 days on house arrest. And so I was in juvenile hall. When I was in juvenile hall, like, so like as I was like kind of kicking with my homeboy and like his older brother and shit, like I never really got like courted into the neighborhood. You mean I never got like jumped in or anything like that. But I kind of started like dressing the part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when I went to juvenile hall that time, I went and kicked it with like more like the Chicano kids and shit. You know what I mean? Like the Latino kids, and like I saw that, like I knew somebody in there, like, oh, my homeboy out there, like yeah, you know what I mean? And I tried to like kind of click up with these guys.
Yeah.
And so like I got, so like this other dude who was like a rival of that group, you know what I mean, who was also Latino, he was kind of, you know what I mean, he was trying to test me and check me, you know what I mean? And I got in a fight. I ended up getting a fight with this dude, and he called me some name and like, oh, you're just a little wannabe white boy trying to, you know what I mean, fit all this stuff. And he called me a name, you know what I mean? He called me a Shavala. And I was like, man, fuck you, dude, and I hit him. And then, when I hit him, and I used like the derogatory term for like where he was from, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And as I did that, so, I hit this dude, whatever, it got broken up. Well, when I hit him, I guess I gave him kind of like an orbital fracture right here, like this,
Oh
he got like
shit.
a hairline, fracture like in his face right here, you know what I mean? And he had to go to the outside hospital and get his face cut open and shit, you know what I mean? They had to like do a little I don't think it like it probably wasn't that bad, you know what I mean? But like he needed medical attention. But anyways, they gave me an in-house charge for that. You know what I mean? They gave me a DA referral, and so they charged me for that county. They gave me another charge for a battery of great bodily injury, and they charged me with a gang enhancement too.
Oh
And
shit.
yeah, yeah, and for really was just a juvenile hall fight. You know what I'm saying? But this is like I think this might be like 1999 or like 2000 maybe.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and
that's when they
this
were in 2000. I got broken off with a gang enhancement too. So it's
yeah, man.
like or 99. I got busted 2000. They charged me with that shit, and that was it.
And the
Like they
thing
were doing
was, is like
motherfuckers
I wasn't
dirty.
even like really in a gang per se. You know what I'm saying? Like I was kicking it, yeah, you know what I mean. But I wasn't like per se like really like even in a gang, you know. And but like they could see that I was like trying to click up with the Mexicans and shit. You know what I'm saying? And like I was a little white kid, and like that shit was not fucking you know what I mean, looked upon favorably. But and you know that's another thing too. Like you know, that I kind of left out. Like my mom actually is half Mexican. You know what I mean? And I do have a lot of Mexican family down in LA and the Valley and shit. But anyways, so yeah, they gave me that, and so they sent me to this like it was like a low level like youth authority kind of. It wasn't like a real YA. It was like kind of like a YA. It was called YA. It was Fountain Springs Youth Authority, so it was like called the YA, but it wasn't really. You know what I
Or
mean?
was
So
it
you
the
could say
California Youth Authority?
yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a California Youth Authority, I guess. You know,
Mhm.
um, but so the whole model was you could be there for 4 months or you could be there for 2 years. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was on a point system, and so I think you needed like 10,000 points to graduate or something like that. And
Yeah.
you got 30 points a day, but you lose points for everything. So like if you cuss, if you don't do your homework, if you
For
disrespect,
cussing?
cussing, yeah, for
Damn.
cussing. And the thing they would show us like R-rated movies and shit though too. You know what I mean? And hey, yeah. So I wanted to get to that. So and but so yeah, I was there. So they sent me to that place. You know what I mean? And like so like, I had to do there. And so you could be there. Yeah. So you could be there for up to 2 years. And yeah. So and yeah, you get 30 points a day, whatever. So they sent me there, right? And I was there for like 2 months. And so like the thing is, if you get like enough write-ups, if you get more than like three major rule violations in less than a month or something like that, they can kick you out of there. And if you failed that place, if you didn't graduate, they send you back to your county and get resentenced. And usually like the next stop was like Preston for most people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That was
go
like
to
kind of
actual like the California Youth Authority at that point.
yeah, that was like a kind of an in between. It was like kind of like the last stop before like the real YA or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So I was there for like 2 months, you know what I mean. And same thing, I was trying to click up with like the Mexican cats, you know, and so yeah, so anyway, we got in a fight, you know what I mean. So there a big fight happened, you know what I mean, that I got involved in. I almost got kicked out of it. I was there for like less than 2 months when this shit happened. So the staff there, they showed us the movie American Me, right?
Yeah.
They showed as like trying to like be like a scared straight thing, you know what I mean? Like trying, oh, you know, and that's what that whole movie was about too. That movie was like kind of like an anti-gang message, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they were trying to show us that I think, you know. And so, anyways, when we watched that movie, there's like that one scene where they kill the dude in the movie theater, and they make that reference to the other kind of rival prison gang, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
when they showed that scene, somebody in the crowd, one of the kids, kind of disrespected, you know what I mean, and was like, "Oh yeah, that's right," you know what I mean, like kind of said something like that. And the other group that I was kicking with took offense to that, you know what I mean? And so like we decided like the next movie night that we were gonna do something, you know.
Kick it off and shit.
Yeah, we kicked it off, you know. And so like yeah, the next so like a week went by and we went into the movies again and we set it all up. We like moved all the tables in front of the and blocked the entrance off into like the little area where the control tower was. And like we knew that they were all gonna sit together, you know what I mean? So like we kind of like let them all sit like in the middle of it and we kind of sat on the outside. And you know, my homeboy was like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, fucking get that dude right there, you know? And so like as soon as they turn the lights off and turn the movie on, I turn around and I was like, what's up? You know? And he was like, you know, whatever. When we started fighting, and I took off on him, I started bombing on him, and then yeah, my homeboy like ran on the one side of me and started bombing this other dude. Another dude ran behind me and started, and then like they all jumped up and like we all jumped up and we were just like a big brawl, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just like fighting with fists and shit, you know what I mean? Just you know what I mean? Just socking each other up or whatever. The cops came in, you know what I mean? Had to like jump over all the desks, you know what I mean? Drag us all apart, you know? They were slipping, you know what I mean? And fucking stubbing their shins on the fucking desk that we had piled up so they
Oh
couldn't get
fuck.
to
They're
us, you
probably
know?
pissed.
Yeah, oh, they were pissed, bro. Yeah, it slammed us all up against the walls, you know what I mean? Pepper spray. I think they pepper sprayed us, you know what I mean? But the thing was with that place, they didn't even have cells. They didn't even have cells to like put us in, you know what I mean?
Oh shit.
It was all bunk beds, you know what I mean? Everything was all bunk beds and shit. So they just like separated us all, took us out to different parts of the facility, were like interviewing us, trying to figure out what was happening, you know what I mean? And it was like, you know, so like somebody said that like I kicked it up, that I was the one that threw the first punch, that I
Oh
started it, you know
fuck.
what I mean? But so they were almost gonna send it back to my county right there, but I'd only been there like a couple weeks, you know what I mean? And that was like a warning, you know what I mean? Like, you're on your way to fucking like to fail on this program and shit, you know what I mean? Like all this, but they gave me another chance, but I lost a grip of points for that. You know what I mean? I think I lost like, I don't know, like 1,000 points or something. I can't remember.
Damn.
Yeah. Lost it. We all did. Everybody that was involved in that lost a shitload of points. You know what I mean? Like to the equivalent of like 4 extra months. You know what I mean? Of like a 4 month. You know what I mean? Extended onto our stay or whatever. And so I ended up chilling at that program for like another year, like about like another year after that. And I actually ended up did fail in that program. So I was getting ready to graduate. Like I almost had enough points to graduate. I was getting ready to get out of there. And I got in this other fight and with this other kid that had like just gotten there, and he like was new there, you know what I mean? And I've been there for a minute, and he was kind of new there, and I was like kind of met like clowning off in the chow hall with my homeboy, and like he like flicked like an empty milk carton at me, and I kind of batted away, and it landed in this other dude's tray, and splashed food all over him and shit, you know what I mean?
Ooh.
And I tried to apologize. I was like, "Hey, my bad, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't mean that." And he was like, "Nah, fuck you." You know what I mean? Like, he didn't want to take the apology and stuff. And so he like kind of followed me into the latrine when I was like brushing my teeth. You know what I mean? And yeah, I was like rinsing my mouth out, and when I turned around, he was like right there waiting for me, and just you know what I mean, and just kind of started bombing on me, and I
Oh
wasn't really
shit.
expecting it, you know what I mean, and so we just started fighting or whatever, and like the floor was all wet, and he slipped, and I kind of ended up on top of him. Well, I didn't even realize, you know what I mean, that I still had my toothbrush in my hand, and my toothbrush was like getting him, you know what I mean, and like would cut his face all up and stuff, you know what I mean, and so like anyways, they sent me back to my county with like this big report, all these pictures of this dude's face. They took a picture of the toothbrush like it was a weapon and shit, you know what I mean? And all this, and like yeah, pictures of my knuckles, my hand was all busted up, you know what I mean? And everything, you know what I mean? With this big report and shit. I think they even gave me a DA referral for that. And that was in Colusa County, but the county didn't pick it up. But they sent me back to my county and I failed that program. And they were gonna send me to YA, they were gonna send me to Preston. But the probation officer was recommending that they send me to Preston for like a behavior, like a 90-day or 120-day behavior evaluation. Um, and the judge was like all on board with it. The DA, everybody was like, "Yep, that's where he needs to go." And mind you, bro, my original return to custody was for fucking truancy. This was the original
Damn,
thing.
man.
This was the original thing that I was placed in juvenile hall for. Well, I mean, the original thing was like a petty theft, basically. You know what I mean? Like stealing from a store. That was while I was on probation. But like this return to custody was over, you know what I mean? Truancy, basically,
It
not
was
going on a
like
store.
petty theft and truancy. So it's like teenage, like little teenage misguided shit. You know what I mean? It's not even
Exactly,
anything
bro. Yeah,
serious.
exactly, man. And yeah, like all the major trouble that I got was always like once I was already inside. You know what I mean? Like once I was already in custody, that's when I caught my most worst charges, honestly. Um, but anyways, I ended up skirting YA though. So like my dad actually came in to the court, one of my court dates, and like wrote up this big letter, you know what I mean, saying like, he was gonna be like more of my life, and like there was gonna be structure and like all this stuff, you know what I mean? Like give another like he doesn't belong there and all this stuff. And my probation officer was like arguing against my dad, like he's like, no, you know what I mean? Like this guy's on his way to becoming a career criminal, all this stuff, you know what I mean? Like he's like, and yeah, he's not being reformed, all this stuff. And the judge was like kind of about it too, but they stayed. They like gave me another court date. They like extended it or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was supposed to come back to court in like a couple of weeks. And so when I did come back to court that time, there was like a different judge. There was like a more liberal kind of judge, I guess. And I guess like he used to be like a federal judge that like saw like all kinds of like crazy cases, you know what I mean? And he like kind of gave me a chance. He was like, like he said, he started asking like, well, what was he originally in custody for? You know what I mean? Like, what was his original charge or whatever? And like they read my original charges and they were like, oh, well, and then he got in a fight, you know what I mean? Like a fist fight, like big deal. And so like, so what he did though, he kind of like made like a compromise with like my probation officer and like what they were recommending. And they put me on like their own behavior evaluation. So like, that's what Preston was too. It was kind of the same thing where like you go to Preston and you could get out of there in 120 days too, I think, right? But if you fucked up and got riots, whatever, then they would resentence you, and they could resentence you to a year or 2 years or whatever. But it was like a behavior evaluation type thing, is what the Preston model was. And and so
I
instead of
think maybe
sending,
it was NR because I know with Preston, I'm not
yeah,
sure because the only time I went to Preston was for fire camp, but I know with Preston a lot of times they already sentenced. You know, what I mean, they go to board, and a
oh,
lot of them are like, you got 18 months, and sometimes they'll turn 18 months to like years.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so
It
that
was
shit
like
was crazy.
NRCC, I think is what it was called. It was like kind of like
Yeah, yeah, NRCC in Sacramento. That's
yeah,
where
yeah,
I think that's where they would do the evaluation. Because I know in
yeah, yeah,
SR,
right.
And
Yeah,
SR, they had the 90-day evaluations too in Norwalk.
yeah. Okay, yeah. And so anyways, yeah, so they put me like at the like the judge like we're gonna put them on our own behavior evaluation in juvenile hall where you got 60 days. You know, like I'd already been down like a year. You know what I mean? I already been there for a year. So they were like 60 days in juvenile hall, like clean time, like no writers, no disrespecting cops, any little thing, and we're gonna send you to this to what to YA. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was so like yeah. So and then but if not, like if you're cool, like no write ups, no nothing, like we're gonna let you out. You know what I mean? You're gonna
Oh,
get out in
dope.
60 days. Yeah, yeah. So they sent me back to juvenile hall. I was there for like 3 weeks or something like that. You know what I mean? Well, when I was in that other place, when I was in Faust, like it was kind of like a boot camp style. So they would have us like working and shit. You know what I mean? Like we had to work too, like on the weekends, and you would have to walk. You had to like walk all over like miles, way out in the cuts, and doing like yard work and landscaping and stuff like that. Well, I had gotten, they made us wear like these big like military style boots and shit. And I had gotten a really bad ingrown toenail, right? And so when I got back sent back to juvenile home, they made us wear these little tiny shoes that were all bunched
Oh,
up,
fuck.
and I couldn't. My toe was all it was all infected and like just nasty. You know what I mean?
Damn.
So I ended up having to go to the outside doctor and get surgery on my toe. You know what I mean? And get my toenail cut out and stuff. And then so they put me back and they put me on medical watch because like I had crutches, but I couldn't like they didn't want me to have the crutches like out in the day room or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
you
so they just put me
be
in my
sleeping
cell.
with them and shit.
Yeah, yeah. So they just kept me in my
Yeah.
cell and they kept me on medical watch, and you know what I mean. So, and so my toe could heal up. My foot was all bandaged up and shit, and I couldn't really walk. You know what I mean? Which was kind of cool because like it was kind of like being on lockdown, but they didn't take your bed away and all that shit because I wasn't in there for disciplinary reasons. So I could like get all my hot meals, books, everything. I had all my stuff in my cell. I could just chill in there. They'd bring my homework from school to me, and I would just do it in there. And so I was on medical watch for like a couple weeks, and that ended up like kind of so like I couldn't get in trouble. You know what I mean? I couldn't get
Yeah.
indicted and shit. You know what I mean? And they ended up letting me out like a couple of days, like a couple of weeks early, actually. You know what I mean? So like by the time I got off medical watch, I only had like 2 weeks left, and I don't know if it was like something with like overcrowding or whatever, but they ended up letting me out, and so yeah, and so I got out that time, and I was like kind of like doing good for a little bit, you know what I mean? I kind of wasn't messing up. I ended up like kind of like going out to the res and trying to find my old homeboy and like seeing where he was at, and like he was already an adult and he was locked up like fighting a case. I
Oh,
think I heard
fuck.
like his older brother had ended up getting murdered actually.
Oh, man.
And so like all like my home and like I didn't really like I didn't really feel comfortable like going back into that neighborhood like by myself. I always went with them, you know what I mean? So like, I didn't really have any fucking any friends left anymore, you know what I mean? Like to kick it really. And I ended up like moving back down to Santa Cruz. My grandparents live in Santa Cruz. I was like going to high school down there for a minute, which was kind of cool. I ended up moving to the Bay Area. My mom ended up going out with this dude. We moved to like Pittsburgh in the Bay Area. I had gotten a job pulling skeet at a gun club, you know what I mean? It was like I was like kind of doing okay, and then we moved back up there to where we were living in Placerville, and I started doing a lot of. I turned 18. I got my GED, and I was like kind of starting to work a little bit. You know what I mean? I was like working little odd jobs and shit, but I started doing like a lot of meth. You know what I mean? I started doing meth really bad,
Damn.
and I kind of like it was kind of like a yeah, man. It was kind of I kind of like started gravitating the war from like away from like hanging out with like more, you know what I mean? I was still kind of dressing like a white, like a Mexican and shit, you know what I mean? And like wearing the kind of clothes, but the people that I was like doing drugs with and kicking it with, like they were not that type, you know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
kind of like these like, kind of like wannabe, like kind of biker types and shit, you know what I'm saying? Where I was like, my style and like my whole aesthetic was like not really like, you know what I mean? Passing with them, but I was like doing drugs and committing crimes and like, you know what I mean? Learning how to hustle with them and shit, you know what I mean? And kind of like started like, you know, um, changing my whole fucking appearance and identity again, really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but anyway, so I ended up catching, I went to jail a couple of times, I think, for like some petty kind of stuff, like a car burglar, a vehicle burglary, you know what I mean? I did like a little county jail time for that. um and a couple other things. I think I got caught with like a 16th and like a speed. They put me on Prop 36. I failed Prop 36 because like
Oh,
for the
shit.
yeah for because like you could get on Prop 36 and like you know what I mean, any kind of drug charge you automatically get out or something like that.
Yeah,
You
and they
know
put you in
whatever.
treatment, like you go to the AA classes and all that shit.
But if you get like a violent charge or like a theft charge or any type of property crime, anything that's not drug related, you automatically get kicked off Prop 36.
Oh,
And so
shit.
that's what happened. So I was on Prop 36, and then I caught the vehicle burglary, and they kicked me off Prop 36. You know what I mean? And I had to do a
Yeah.
little bit of jail time, and then so I ended up catching my prison term when I was like 20, like in 2005, and that was for a stolen vehicle. You know what I mean? I got pulled over, and I like pulled in this little apartment complex, and there was a cop that was kind of behind me, and he just pulled in right behind me, and I had the screwdriver hanging out of the fucking ignition and everything.
Were you high at the time?
Huh?
Were you high at the time?
Oh, bro, it was, yeah, man. It was all, you know what I mean? I've been on a bad one, you know what I mean, for a minute, and they were already kind of looking for me. I mean, I was already being like, you know what I mean, suspect in, you know, in a number of like property crimes that have been taking place around the county, and like they've been kind of looking for me, you know, and yeah, man. So I was just like, I was like caught red-handed, and and I ended up catching my prison term over that. They gave me 16 months with half for that, you know, um, and um, and yeah, man. So I ended up going to Tracy and reception there. So like, you know, again, you know what I mean? Like all my worst shit, you know, all like my violent stuff, all that stuff always happened when I was already in custody. You know what I'm saying? All
Damn.
the shit that I got, all the times I got busted on the streets were always for like, yeah, auto theft. Kind of like, you know what I mean? Not really serious stuff, but so when I went to Tracy, you know what I mean? I was involved, I got involved in an incident like my very first day, you know what I mean? Like we went on the bus with this dude from my county, like a couple dudes from my county, and one of them was like, you know what I mean? Whatever, you know what I mean? And I got called on to do something, you know, and I did. And that was like my very first day. Like as soon as we got off the bus and they put us in the holding cell, you know what I mean? I got involved in this, you know, fight in the holding cell. And this dude didn't get hurt that he got hurt a little bit, you know what I mean? But he didn't get hurt that bad. But anyway, we actually ended up getting away with that, you know what I mean? Like they came in, the dude like held it like, you know, they came in and you know, not to get into too many like the bloody details or whatever, you know. But they like, you know, they came in, they seen the dude laying there, you know what I mean? They pulled us all out, interviewed everybody, put everybody that was in the holding cell in the cage, you know what I mean? We're taking pictures of all of us, you know what I mean? And the dude that was the victim in the case or whatever, you know, he he kind of held his mud, you know what I mean? He didn't really say what happened. He said that, you know, they asked him how he got all these marks on him, you know what I mean? And like what happened. And he said that he had gotten in a fight in county jail the night before and that he never reported it, you know what I
Mm.
mean? And then nobody else said anything. Nobody saw nothing. Nobody said anything. This dude wasn't trying to implement anybody or telling anybody, you know what I mean? And so they let us all go, you know what I mean? They ended up taking him to the hospital to get medical attention, you know what I mean? And they let me and my homeboy go back out to the line, you know what I mean? And they put us in reception. And and so like I was out there in reception and you know, when you're in reception, you have to go through like a 10-day like evaluation thing. You have to get like a TB shot and like go to medical and like get cleared to go out to yard, you know.
Yeah.
And so I got cleared, you know, I was in there like 13 days, you know, and so on the 13th day I was able to go out to yard. And the very first time I went out to yard, I was on the yard for like 20 minutes and we got rushed by another race, you know what I mean? And I was kicking with the white dudes at this time too, you know what I mean? So like that was
Mhm.
the other thing. Like um, when I was in juvenile, when I was in jail, I ended up going to somebody that I knew and like kind of told them, hey, you know what I mean? When I was in juvenile hall and like, you know, this boys ranch, I was like riding with these dudes, but like, I'm not really from a neighborhood, you know what I mean? Like, who should I click up with when I go? I don't really know what to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, hey, all that juvenile hall stuff, like, doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, what matters, like, when you get to the pen, you know what I mean? Like, whatever you do, like, that's what you got to stay with, you know what I mean? And, and you know, and I was already kind of like had been kicking it with. I already knew a lot of people from that county and like had like different friends at that time. You know what I mean? So I was
Yeah.
all right. You know, I'm just gonna roll with the whites. You know, and so when I was out in the yard, this other race rushed the whites. We were on our handball courts, and I kind of got caught up in that. You know, and just kind of stand in the wrong place. And you know, anyways, had to defend myself or whatever. And I got took into the hole for participation in the riot. You know what I mean? And then so while I was in the hole, the dude who I was involved in that first incident with, both of them, whatever, he ended up going into protective custody for whatever reason. I don't
Oh
know.
shit.
You know what I mean? And locking it up. So I ended up getting a confidential informant thing slid under my door while I was in Aztec for the riot. And I got in this other riot for this battery on an inmate or whatever, you know. And so I ended up catching a shoe term for that. I ended up catching two shoe terms for that. I ended up catching a shoe term for the participation in the riot and a shoe term for the battery on the inmate, which originally it was I think it was a battery with a weapon, but then ended up getting dropped down to just like a regular battery or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And and I caught a 4-month shoe for that, a year shoe or like a year and a half shoe for the riot, and then I got brought up on more charges from my county too. So they found like another vehicle with like my fingerprints in it, you know what I mean? And
Damn.
yeah, I had to go back out to court, got sentenced to another 2 with half, came back. They took all my good time for both terms. You know what
Oh
I'm saying?
shit. So you go
And
from
so
8 months.
8 months to like basically like 3 years, basically, you know?
Yeah. I'm still here. Camera died. My bad.
Yeah, yeah. And so what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so I was in Aztec there for like a few months, and it was kind of funny actually. So Tracy's like a real old kind of prison. You know what I mean? It's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Not as old as some of these prisons. It's not as old as like San Quentin or Folsom or something like that, but it's still a pretty old prison. I think it's been there since like the 30s or something like that. But you could like pop your door. You know what I mean? You could pop in the Aztec unit. Dudes could like you could like stick a toothpaste cap or like something inside your like your lock hole, and when the
Yeah.
cops close it, it's like it feels like it's locked, but if you push on it hard enough, you could pop your door open. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my friend that was next door, he was doing that. You know what I mean? He was popping out of it. He was popping his door at night, and anyway, well, I don't know to get into like the politics, or whatever, but like he was trying to, you know what I mean, open up all the doors, you know what I mean, so we can kind of
Yeah.
get our get or whatever, you know. And but he ended up so anyways, he ended up getting some other he ended up not being able to do that, but he got his hands on some other type of contraband, you know what I mean? When he was out of his cell one night. And basically so we got like a box of these shaving razors, you know what I mean? Like a whole box of shaving razors to cut with him. So we were breaking them all down, and so I ended up, anyway. Then getting caught with some of these fucking razor blades,
Damn.
like 150 razor blades or something like that, or like 200 razor. Like it was like a lot. We had them all bundled up. We had them bundled up in like little stacks of 10. You know what I mean? And we had them in there for a long time. I was in there for a few months, man, and we never got busted with them. But like they just showed up at our door one day, like super quick. And I had them out, and I was like getting ready to send them to somebody on the line, I think, you know what I mean? And the cops were already right there at the door, and I was like, oh shit! And I just had to put them away real quick. I stepped in my mattress, and they pulled us out of our cell. You know what I mean? I think we had to go out to the yard or something like that. They hit our cell. They found all these blades. You know what I mean? And I got charged with that too. So I got another 10-month shoe
Damn.
on top of the ride, on top of the bat. So I got like 3 shoe turns, like right off the bat. You know what I mean? My points got jacked up to a level 4. You know what I mean? I should have been on a level 1 ranch or a fire camp or some shit. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, man. I ended up getting a 10-month shoe for that on top of everything else. They took all my good time away for both cases. You know what I mean? And I'd already been down, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like 6 months or something by this time, I think, you know? And so I ended up doing like 10 months of my shoe term right there in K-Wing and Tracy and the AdSeg unit there. And then I got sent to Tehachapi for the rest of my shoe term. And I was in the Tehachapi unit, the max unit there for like 5 months. I was there for like 5 months. And they put me up for transfer to Kern Valley or New Folsom. And I ended up getting kicked out to the main line there in Tehachapi for a minute. And I was on that yard for like 2 or 3 weeks or something, you know what I mean? And then I ended up getting sent to New Folsom. And I was in New Folsom on B yard up there for like another 14 months, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I made it through the rest of my term with like, you know what I mean, relatively like no more incidents, you know what I mean, like the rest of my time, although it was like kind of like sketchy, you know what I mean, and in some places that was not a good place to be, I was able to kind of like walk through there without getting involved in any other incidents, and was able to parole, and I paroled from there from B yard in 2008, and I had a couple return to custodies. Um, Actually, I almost caught a new case, and it was like I was like really lucky, man, like the way it all played out, because it could have been a bad case, but it was just like super kind of a random thing, man. It was like basically like a road rage kind of incident, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was with this chick that I didn't really know that well, you know what I mean? And I was like smoking some pot with her and shit. I mean, I was like doing drugs. I was kind of like relapsing. I was kind of like I was slipping, you know what I mean? I was like starting to slip, but I wasn't like doing anything like that crazy or that bad, you know? But I was like kind of slipping, like relapsing and getting into my addiction again, you know? And but so I was with this chick, man, and she like cut this dude off. We were on this little back road smoking a blunt, smoking some weed or whatever. And we were driving out of there, and this dude was like driving in front of us, like super slow. And she tried to pass him, and he pulled out in the middle of the road, so we couldn't pass. And so he wasn't letting us pass, you know, and playing
Yeah.
this little game with us. And so we got to the end of the road where there's a stop sign, and she like pulled out in front of him all crazy and like just drove off. We got all pissed, and he started chasing us down. And he was like, you know, riding her ass, honking his horn, yelling. You know, I was looking in the window. He was like yelling, you know what I mean? And so we pulled him in this like little store, and he got out. I had my homeboy with me too, and we got out, and this dude, you know, got out of his truck and was like running up on us, like acting like he wanted to fight us. And he tried to like lunge at me to like try to scare me or something like that, you know what I mean? And I cracked him in the head, you know what I mean? And he stumbled back. Well, he pulled out a knife, you know what I mean? And he came lunging at me with this fucking knife in his hand. And my homeboy probably saved my life, bro, because he was like gonna like take my head off with this thing. But my homeboy like kind of stepped in and hit this dude like mid stride and knocked this dude down on his ass, kicked the knife out of his hand. Well, this dude like stood up, man, and just spit out like a mouthful of teeth, bro.
Ooh.
all over the ground and just blood, you know what I mean, all in his mouth. And my homeboy like, we're like, all right, well, let's get out of here, you know. And we jump back in the car to take off. Well, this dude like tried to like get behind the car and like rip our license plate off, you know what I mean? Like now he like wanted to call the cops and all this shit, and he was kind of the one that
You know,
started it, you know what I
you
mean?
know, you know what's crazy
And
is that when it comes to like a lot of civilians, they act tough sometimes.
yeah,
Like it's a trip because they want to take it there, and then it's like they don't know what they're up against, and then when it happens, it's like that's when they're like, oh, cops. It's like
yeah,
why
yeah.
you take it there? Like not that
Oh
I condone violence or anything, but it's like you have to know what you're getting yourself into.
yeah, man. It almost turned into like this whole political case because it turned out the dude was not from there, but he was visiting his uncle for like a birthday party or something, and it turned out that his uncle was a correctional officer at Mill Creek State Prison. You know what I mean?
Oh
And
shit.
so like that came up in the fucking police report and all this. But anyway, so like how it got reported to was crazy too, because I guess like you know the people that were standing around didn't know what was going on. And so they saw us jump in this other car with these chicks. And when he was trying to rip her license plate off, the girl that was driving, she kind of froze up and didn't want to go. And I was like, man, fucking go, you know? And she was like kind of like she was kind of shocked or whatever. So I like reached over the side and like put my leg over the thing and put the car in gear and like pressed the gas and was steering myself and drove us out of that parking lot and I got us down the road a little bit, you know what I mean? And then I like let over and I was like, fucking go, you know? And so we left. And so that got reported, you know what I mean? Like they thought that we like stole those girls' car or something like that.
Oh
You know what I
shit.
mean? And of course the dude that we hit, like he didn't say anything, you know what I mean? He let him just think that probably, you know. And so when I ended up getting picked up and I ended up getting arrested, my initial charges were fucking carjacking, kidnapping, strong arm robbery, and then battery with great bodily injury. Right?
That's life.
Yo, bro, they were. I was like, I was looking at like a serious case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The only thing that saved me is I got caught by myself. I got picked up like outside this hotel room, and so they ended up pulling those girls. They got the license plate of the girls whose cars we supposedly stole, and they ended up pulling them over. You know what I mean? And the first one they were asking me when I got arrested, like, "Where's the car at? Where are the girls?" You know what I mean? You mean what happened? You know what I mean? And I was like, I wasn't going to tell on them or like say anything. So I just placed. I'm not saying anything until I talked to my lawyer and all this stuff. You know what I mean? And so yeah, they charged me with all these fucking crazy charges. Well, they ended up pulling the girl over. She ended up getting pulled over in her car, and they ended up questioning her. You know what I mean? And she was like, "Nah, that's not what happened. Like we know those dudes. Like they're cool. It wasn't like that. You know what I mean? Like that's not what happened or whatever." And actually, what she said in the police report actually is what helped us and like really saved us. Actually, I mean, because she said something that I wouldn't have said. You know what I mean? What I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to say. You know what I mean? And she told him like, "Dude was the aggressor. He chased us down. He was starting to shit, and that he pulled out the blade." You know what I mean? And I wouldn't have been able to say that, you know what I mean? But she said that, you know, and so that came out too, you know, and so we went to court, we went to a preliminary hearing. This dude came to testify, and the dude, it was bad too, man. So like, it knocked out his two front teeth and it broke all his other teeth. So it was like domino.
Ah
One tooth went into, he had to
shit.
get all his teeth pulled out on one side of his face. I mean, his whole upper jaw had to get all the teeth pulled out and had to get all kinds of crazy dental work and shit. You know what I mean? And so he came to our preliminary hearing, testified against us, said what happened, and then our lawyers, our public defenders, which is like which is not very common, we actually kind of went to bat for us. They pointed to the girl, they brought the girl's testimony. You mean the girl's statement? You mean they brought up her police statement, and they're saying like, did you have this? And then the dude on the stand, he admitted to it. He admitted to pulling out the blade because he thought there was two of us and that we were going to jump him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was his case. So he admitted to pulling out the piece on us. And then the
He
judge
admitted
was
he
like,
admitted to chasing you guys too?
um, that no, I don't remember. I don't think that part came out.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he was like trying to make it seem like it was a beatdown. You know what I mean? And like yeah, like we jumped him or something. You know what I mean? He only got hit two times. He got hit once by me and once by my homeboy. You know what I mean? And my hit, I got him like he put his head down, so I like just hit him like right here in the forehead. It fucked my hand up probably more than it fucked his head up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and so the judge was like, when he heard that dude say that on the stand right there on us, the judge was like, well, it sounded like a felony might have been committed in you know what I mean, by the defendant or by
The
the
witness.
accused, but yeah, by the victim. You know what I mean? It sounded like
Yeah.
an additional felony may have been committed or something like that. You know what I mean? And so they dropped. So anyway, they dropped all the carjacking and the kidnapping and all that shit. All that shit went away, and we were just being charged with the battery with great bodily injury. And then this came up in the testimony. They were trying to give me, I think they were going to give me 2 years, the low term for a 245 for assault and battery or great bodily injury, right? And they were going to give my homeboy the midterm of 4 years, you know. And
It's 11 o'clock.
and so, oh yeah, that's me, my bad. And then so so when he said that testimony, you know what I mean, we deliberated or whatever for another couple months, and like we were gonna like we felt like we had a case now, you know what I mean, and so they ended up coming down and they gave us both county years, you know what I mean. So I ended up beating another prison term, and they gave us we pled out to the battery thing with a strike with no prison term though, you know what I mean, and we just took a county bullet on that one.
Yeah.
And then and so like I ended up getting lucky on that. And then so like it was like kind of around that time, you know what I mean, I think where like I really started wanting to change. I mean, where like I realized like fuck, you know what I mean? Like kind of got a fucking second chance, you know what I mean? And was like trying to do something like really like wanting to kind of do something different, you know what I mean? When I got out on that one. And I ended up still going back a couple more times on just like violations for like stupid shit. Cause I was like still getting out and like kind of using, you know what I mean, and getting dirty drug tests, not reporting, and just getting like COP, you know what I mean? I'll go to county, get sent to Tracy, and just be there long enough to like go see the board. And they would always like, you know, give me like time served, you know what I mean, or whatever. And I would always get kicked out real quick, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I did that. Like I did a couple of those, you know what I mean? But like that whole time I was like ready to like do something different. I just didn't really know what, you know what I mean? I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. You know what I mean? Like I knew that I didn't want to like keep going back and like, you know what I mean? And like be out committing crime and doing all kinds of shit, you know what I mean? But I didn't really know what else to do at the same time either. You know, I didn't really have the blueprint, you know what I mean? I didn't really know what to do. Which I guess kind of like gets me to like where like, you know what I mean? How I started like, you know, changing, making the change, you know what I mean? And yeah, man, I think like for me, part of it, one, you mean like, yeah, I wanted to do something different, but part of it too, because like, you know, it was having like kind of a network and a support group, you know what I mean? And like seeing and like being around other people that were doing something different, you know, because I had never had that. I had never been around anybody that was doing anything different, you know what
Yeah,
I
you've
mean?
been
So
around gang members and bikers and
yeah.
criminals.
And yeah, and people that were just like getting high and you know what I mean, and hustling and all that, you know what I mean? And that's all I really knew how to do, you know what I mean? I didn't really have a lot of life skills, you know, and yeah, man. So I know like that question comes up a lot, man. I always like stumble, you know what I mean? I always kind of fumble when people ask me like, well, what was it for you that like that made you change? You know what I mean? And it's hard, man. I never know what to say, you know, and it's a hard question to answer. But like the more that I think about it, man, I have to like say that it's like not. I don't think it like any one person can do it by themselves. You know what I mean? It's a group effort, man. And it has to
Definitely.
be like with community. You know what I'm saying? And a network of people, you know what I mean? And for me at first, it was kind of like the recovery scene, you know what I'm saying? But I don't think that it has to be that for because I was locked up with a lot of dudes that weren't even drug addicts, you know what I'm saying? They were just came from underserved neighborhood, underserved, you know what I mean, kind of communities and they did what they had to do to survive. They, you know, were hustling or whatever, you know what I mean? But they weren't necessarily addicts, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so like maybe like that kind of recovery model wouldn't work for a lot of people, you know what I mean? But it was having a group, you know what I mean? It was having like a whole scene of people that were like that had kind of been there and were doing something different, man. That was like really kind of crucial for me, you know what I mean? Especially like in the early days, you know what I mean, in the early stages, and having someone who I could follow, you know what I mean, and having a role model, really, you know what I mean, having a new role model where I could look to and say like, okay, they're doing it like that, you know what I'm saying, and I could follow that, you know what I mean, and something that I could like that I could look at and copy kind of in a certain way, you know what I mean, and so yeah, it's crazy, man. So like when I got out the last time, my last little violation, I was like done. You know what I mean? And I ended up going back and working out in the same vineyards that I used to work out when I was a little kid, man. It was the only job I could get. I didn't have a car. It was like right down the street from my mom's house. You know, I could walk there if I had to, you know what I'm saying? Like, and nobody else would really, I couldn't really get a job anywhere else. You know what I mean? Yeah, I had a bunch of felonies, you know what I'm saying? Not only that, like I had always done like construction a little bit here and there. You know, I'd done construction with my dad and stuff, but like it was a small town, man, and like all the contractors in the town all knew me, all knew my reputation. I would like, you know, show up to work. I would work for like a week, get my paycheck, and bounce, you know what I mean, and not come back. And it's like nobody really wanted to give me a chance, you know what I mean? And
It's not one of those spots either where you're gonna have like high rises where you could just work on and shit.
go join the union. Well, yeah, that
Yeah.
was my plan. You know what I mean? That was kind of my plan. I was gonna like go work out in this vineyard, save up a little bit of money, get a car, and then I was gonna go try to like pay my union dues and get in the labor union in Sacramento. You know, that was kind of like my game plan at first. Um, and so yeah, I went out there to the vineyard. I mean, I went and tracked down that old dude that ran that place, and I was like, "What's up, man? You know what I mean? Can you put me to work?" You know what I mean? At first, like he didn't even want to hire me, bro. He was like, "Oh man, you don't want to do this." You know what I mean? Like you go get a job with one of these contractors in town and they make better money. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to work out here with us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was like, "Nah, man, for real. Like nobody else. I've already tried everything else. You know what I mean? Like nobody nobody wants to fuck with me. You know what I mean? like give me something, you know. And he at first he didn't put me out in the fields again. He put me like on a weed eater on like a weed eating crew, you know what I mean? So like they would have like it was like thousands of acres of vineyards, you know what I mean? And so what they would do, they want all the rows looking nice and clean, and they would fly over and take pictures to put like pictures in the brochures and stuff, you know what I mean? And so like in their magazines or whatever and advertising, you know what I mean? So that's what I was did. I was like on a weed eating crew with like 3 or 4 other guys, and we just weed eated it, man. Like thousands of acres of fucking vineyards, all up
Damn.
and down to the rows. You know what I'm saying?
That sounds
And
easier than the other shit, but that shit sounds hard as fuck too, though.
yeah, yeah. I mean, 'cause just walking all day, miles, miles and miles and miles of just weed eating. You know what I mean? And I did that like the whole summer, and then the summer was over, and that was all done. We didn't have anything else to do. And all the guys that I was weeding with, they all left. There were like a couple of the white guys too, you know what I mean? Kind of like, fuck ups or whatever, that were kind of in the same situation as I was. And then they all ended up taking off. They ended up like after the summer was over, they left and went and got work somewhere else. But I still needed some. I like went up to him, I was like, hey, what's up, man? Like I still need to work. I still don't, you know what I mean? I still don't have a fucking vehicle, you know what I mean? Like I need to keep working, you know? And he was like, well, like you did a good job. Like if you want, I'll send you out there with the fellas, you know what I mean? I'll put you out in the lines, you know what I mean? If that's what you really want, you know what I mean? But you gotta do it. Like don't fucking you gotta work or whatever, you know? And I was like, fuck it, man, put me out there, you know? And so I worked out there, yeah, man. I was out there, you know what I mean, with undocumented agricultural workers and shit, man. I worked out there for like a year and a half and just, pruning, picking, running drip line, planting, you know what I mean, putting up new fences, building, you know what I mean, making way for new vineyards and stuff like that, clearing land off and stuff, and yeah, I worked out there, for like a year and a half, and then he ended up
Damn, you
giving
did
me.
that for a year and a half?
I did that for like a year and a half. Yeah, he ended up
That's
giving me.
tough ass work too, right?
Yeah, yeah, man. And yeah, I was only making like $9 an hour and shit too, but
Damn.
luckily like, my mom wasn't charging me. I was like staying in her garage and shit, and he ended up giving me an advance. I bought a truck. He giving me an advance to buy a truck, and like kind of started taking that out of my paycheck, like let me make payments to him. Like I bought a truck and shit, you know what I mean? And then yeah, then I met my homeboy Steven Zifra. He was one of the dudes. I know you had Danny on the show a while back. So it was the other dude that started Underground Scholars with him, right? And so I ran into him, and he was like, like what are you gonna like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? You working out here in these fields? Like, what's your next move and shit? And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm gonna go try to like get in the labor's union or something like that. And he was like, man, you should go to school. You know what I mean? Go to community college. You know what I mean? That's what I'm just did. I just got accepted to UC Berkeley and shit. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do a PhD in literature. I'm gonna be a college professor and all this shit. You know what I mean?
That's
I
dope.
didn't even know what a PhD was, bro. I didn't know the difference between a PhD or a GED, bro. I didn't know what any of these a master's degree, like none of this stuff meant anything to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I was like, how do you do that? But I was like, why literature, bro? Like, why are you gonna do literature and shit? You know what I mean? And he's like, oh man, when I was in the shoe, when I was up in the Bay, like, I would just like read all these classic texts, bro. I would read like Shakespeare and like all this different stuff, you know what I mean? And so yeah, man. So now I'm just gonna like study in college. I'm gonna get my PhD in this shit, all this stuff that I used to read when I was in the pen, when I was in the shoe. And I was like, and I started thinking like, oh shit, I did that too. You know, when I was in ASIG, when I was in the shoe and Tracy, I was like reading shit like that too. I was like reading classics, Charles Dickens, like all these like kind of classic texts, you know what I mean? And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do that too, you know what I mean? And I went, and so I went down to community college, signed up, man. I like went right into like the first day of the academic council. I was like, I'm gonna do a PhD in literature. and,
Oh,
and the counselor was like, oh,
pretty ambitious.
he was like, you are you? He's like, and like, what makes you think that like you want to do literature? Like, where did that, I was like, just coming in off the field, all tatted up for one, all sunburned and shit, been working out in the vineyards, you know what I mean? Just like, a bunch of stickers and like, you know what I mean? Probably smell, I don't know, you know what I mean? I was like straight came in off work, you know what I mean? All my work clothes and shit. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do a PhD in literature, And this fool was like, all right, man, well, if you're gonna do that, you need to take all these classes and do all this and like your language requirements and like all this stuff, you know what I mean? And I was all right, and fucking. I went, applied for financial aid or whatever, and I still was working out in the vineyards, like on the weekends and stuff. You mean, and like working out there part time while I was going to school for a minute. But yeah, man, I started going to school, man, and I went to I was at Los Rios Community College,
Yeah.
Folsom Lake College, up there in Sacramento, and I went there for like a year, Yeah, I ended up moving out of my mom's place. I met some people that bought that were like rented out a big house, like a big 3 bedroom house. I went and moved in, rented a room out with them. You know what I mean? Was staying with some friends, going to school. You know what I mean? Working, whatever. It was cool, man. It was a good time. And I stayed there for like a year. I went to school there for like a year, and then I ended up moving back to Santa Cruz.
Real
My,
quick though, how did that feel being linked up with people like that? Like it's changing environment. Like
oh,
how was that for you?
it was beautiful, man. It was lovely, bro. It was just so like refreshing. Like I never experienced like my whole life was just like constantly like I felt like my whole body was just always in like one big knot. You know what I mean? Just always like tensed up and just like not knowing what's gonna happen, bro. And just like everything was just so precarious. You know what I mean? And like now it's like yeah, just like everybody around me is just like cool on a cool trip. Like nobody's trying to get over on each other. You know what I mean? Everything was just like on the up and up and like laughing and like going out to eat and just like it was the most the healthy environment. I never lived like that before, man. It was just so
People had goals instead of schemes.
yeah, bro. It was crazy, man. I didn't even know people lived like that. You know what I mean? I didn't even know like that kind of life was out there. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. It was really nice. And then, so anyways, yeah. So I ended up moving back to Santa Cruz. So like my grandma, she had been married to this dude, and he had this really nice place. I mean, he had like 14 acres up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I had lived with them. I went to high school down there for a minute, you know what I mean? And I lived with them a couple times off and on down there. But he ended up dying, you know what I mean? And he ended up passing away. He had, they're both really bad. My grandma drinks a lot too, you know what I mean? But they were both
Yeah.
really bad alcoholics and shit, and they were partying and getting high too or whatever. But he ended up like pretty much drinking. He got cirrhosis of the liver, you know what I mean? Like basically like drank himself to death. But like, and towards like the later years, he had taken out all kinds of loans on his house, you know what I mean? And he like invested in like a restaurant business somewhere downtown, and like that went under. He was like trying to start this like contractor's business and was like losing a bunch of money that way. And so when he passed away, like he left my grandma with this, and she wasn't working, you know what I mean? And my grandma actually ended up homeless down there. They ended up foreclosing that house on her, and she
Oh
got kicked out
fuck.
of there, man. And it ended up homeless down there in Santa Cruz. And she was like staying in an RV, and like her RV kept getting all kinds of tickets. You know what I mean? My mom and my aunts, you know what I mean? They bought her like an RV, and that ended up getting impounded. And she was like staying. So she ended up getting like a Section 8, you know what I mean, for senior citizens or whatever. And then she was like almost going to get kicked out of the Section 8 place too, because she wasn't like keeping up her place. You know what I mean? She was like, she was having people come over there and like kind of trashing the play and like causing a scene. You know what I mean? She was like doing real bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she kind of needed help. You know what I mean? Every time like her caseworker would come over, the apartment would be all messed up and shit. You know what I'm saying? And she wasn't like cooking her own meals and all this stuff. So I ended up moving back down to Santa Cruz to kind of like help her out, you know what I mean? And also just to kind of a change of scenery for myself too, you know what I mean? Kind of get out of that place, you know what I mean? And Santa Cruz was cool. I still had like some friends down there and stuff that I remember from high school that were like kind of doing good and doing cool. So I ended up I ended up enrolling in community college down there in Santa Cruz and moved in with my grandma for a minute and was like kind of helping her like make dinner, like house chores and little shit, you know what I mean? Checking up on her. And then it was cool. I ended up buying a sailboat. I ended up buying a sailboat down in the harbor, and I'm getting like a liveaboard slip. So I was like staying on this like little 30-foot sailboat and then going, you know what I mean, help my grandma out, going to school. I met my daughter's mom, you know what I mean? My daughter's mom got pregnant down there, and had my daughter, and then yeah, then I got accepted to UC Berkeley, and I got accepted to UC Berkeley, UCLA, a couple of different places. And I ended up transferring to UC Berkeley, and yeah, and I ended up getting plugged in with like underground scholars and stuff. Well, I was already kind of plugged in. So while I was in Santa Cruz, the hunger strike started happening in
Yeah.
Carlton Bay, right? And 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 I was talking to Steven Steele, and I was like, I had met Danny at a couple events, and they were like, you know what I mean? They were like doing actions. You know what I mean? They were doing demonstrations around the hunger strikes and like raising awareness in the Berkeley campus. And it was a big deal. You know what I mean? And my friend Steven, like he showed me like the agreement, the agreement to end hostilities, you know what I mean? And like show me what they're trying to do up there. And I was like, damn, he's like, yeah, man, you know what I mean? We're trying to be in solidarity with the hunger strikers and like raise awareness because they don't want to put it in the news and the media. And so I got involved with underground scholars, you know what I mean? And kind of like abolitionist type of organizing, like through that, you know what I mean? And so I ended up starting a student organization at my community college, Student Solidarity Coalition. And like I started getting involved with the Barrios Unidos there in Santa Cruz. I started doing an intern for them and was like going to different events, and we had them come to the campus with they had like the prison trailer that has like a big U-Haul, and they turned it into like a prison cell with
Oh
all the
shit.
different, you know what I mean? And so it's like so like people can kind of see what a shoe cell looks like, you know what I mean? And they brought that on the campus to my community college, and like we had like a big event around the hunger strikes and shit, you know what I mean? And and yeah, man, and so yeah, I ended up going up to Berkeley. was all involved with underground scholars, and yeah, and I stuck to it, man. The whole time I stayed at English, I stayed a literature major, English major, you know what I mean, and taking classes, and I stuck with that, you know what I mean. Even at
Yeah.
times where it like there was a lot of times when I was like, man, like, am I sure I want to do this?
Yeah.
Like once I started like really figuring out like what it was, I mean, which I don't know if I still do even know, but you know what I mean. No, I do, but yeah, man, I just like stubbornly, man. I think it just out of sheer stubbornness. You know what I mean, like I said, I was gonna do this from the beginning. Like this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And I did it. And so yeah, I went up to Cal. I started doing research. I got a couple like research scholarship, undergraduate research fellowships. You know what I mean? And I got into a PhD program. And that's where I'm at now. I'm in a PhD program down here in UC Santa Barbara. And
So you walk into a community college,
yeah,
all scraped up, sunburned, not knowing what you're talking about, saying, I'm gonna be a literature PhD, right? I'm gonna get my PhD in literature. And years later, you're getting your PhD in literature.
that's right, man.
That's crazy because a lot of people say a lot of the times all you need to do is just believe,
Yeah,
right? Like you do have to work. Yeah, that's not all you need to do. You can't just believe like I'm gonna get a PhD in literature and sit in the couch all day. Like you have to put in the work. But if you believe you can do it,
yeah,
then like and you do what it takes, you'll do that shit.
yeah.
So let me ask for people who are on the fence about going to school, like, oh, it's too expensive, or I don't know what I'm gonna do, or like it's is it for me? What would you say?
Um, I don't know. This there are like, you know what I mean. It can be a hang up for some people. You know what I mean. Like I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say like schools like that. It's not the only way. You know what I mean. There's a
Mm,
lot of people that are doing great things, and you know what I mean, and doing things. For me, like and like yeah, I have acquired some debt. You know what I mean. All that. You know what I mean. Not everything's great about it. I have a lot of, you know what I mean. I have a lot of beefs with like the university, you know what I mean, and the way the university it runs and the way it's organized and everything, you know what I mean. Like public education is all messed up and there's a lot of problems with it, you know what I mean. So I'm not like it's not the destination point, you know what I mean. I'm not gonna say like, oh, you know what I mean, if you're getting out of prison or whatever, but I will say this, you know what I mean, that we have created a kind of a community, you know what I
mm,
mean, within the university setting, similar to like what I was saying, like the recovery scene, you know what I mean? And but it's not necessarily like that, you know what I mean? So like I think that one aspect of it, it is a very healthy, it is a much not a very, but it's a much more healthy environment, especially for someone who's coming from like, coming from an institution that's been incarcerated around like, you know what I mean, a super toxic environment where like, violence is always on the radar, you know what I mean? Whereas like at least like within a university, like college students, you know what I mean, and like professors, they're trained to be like to talk to you respectfully and like and gentle, you know what I mean? And it can be a much more kind of like a nurturing environment. And especially now with the groups like Underground Scholars and Project Rebounds, like we have like communities that people set up ready to welcome, you know what I mean, people coming from like hostile environments with open arms. And we don't care where you're from, you know what I mean, like where what your background is, you know what I mean, like who you were riding with while you were doing time. Like there's somebody, you know what I mean, we got, blacks, Chicano, northerners, southerners, everybody, you know what I mean, Asians, people who might have been hostile towards each other at one point, all kicking it, you know what I mean, breaking bread together, you know what I mean, studying, starting study groups together, you know what I mean, reading the same books, you know what I mean, coming up with ideas, organizing together, you know what I mean. And so it's really kind of a beautiful thing in that way. And it
hell
really is.
yeah.
We kind of have like set up like our own kind of infrastructure, you know what I mean? We have a particular infrastructure for people like us, you know what I'm saying? And so for that reason, for somebody coming from like, coming from like an incarceration background, that's the main reason I would say to do it. You know what I mean? Not necessarily because of like the career opportunities or anything like that. If nothing else, just for like the kind of healthy and understanding and like welcoming kind of social atmosphere of it. You know what I'm saying? We're like for me too, yeah, like doing construction, you know what I mean? Like for someone who's been like incarcerated and you mean where everything's like all about it could be hard if you got like an asshole boss that's, you know what I mean, doesn't really understand where you're coming, cussing at you, talking to you like you're stupid. That could be hard for a lot of people, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yeah, man, kind of like that is a lot of the people that come from that life. There's not a lot of, you know what I mean? A lot of people that work in those trades, they have some of the same traumas that we do, and they haven't like, you know what I mean, they haven't like gone through like the healing process and stuff like that too. And so it could, you know what I mean, it could be kind of a toxic environment for somebody, you know what I mean. And you might decide like later on, you know what I mean, once probably if that's the way you want to go, because yeah, there's a lot of problems with being in education. I mean, you have to take out a loan, you have to pay that shit back, and a bachelor's degree these days is kind of like, not much more than a high school diploma. You know what I mean? Like you got to go further. You got to get a master's degree or go to, you know what I mean, do something bigger. You know what I mean? And so like it's not the end all fix all, you mean, be all solution, you know what I mean? But there are a lot of positive aspects about it, and for me, like that was one of the things, you know what I mean? It was like I can kind of make my own schedule. It allows me to have like a certain amount of autonomy, you know what I mean, where I don't got to like deal with like a boss yelling at me, talking down at me, talking to me like I'm stupid, like I don't know what I'm doing. My professors are all, you mean, despite whatever other problems there may be, they're respectful if nothing else. You know what I mean? And they
Yeah.
talk to you like in a way, treat you like a human. You know what I mean? And it's and you get to learn and read and just in a you know what I mean, in a cool environment that you know what I mean, that was really good for me. You know what I mean? It was really good for me. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's thing, what works for one person might not work for the next person, you mean, but it really did work for me, man. It was a really good place and a good environment for me, and I really ended up thriving in like the kind of education kind of scene and environment for sure. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And so what would you say the future looks like for you?
Man, you know, ideally, I'm training, you mean, I'm in a PhD program. I'm training to be a scholar and an academic. And you mean, ideally, like a professor, you mean, like some type of academic appointment and teaching, you know what I mean, is what I want to do. Like initially, like what I would really like, I'm trying to end up at a Cal State. That's what I would really like to do, is like end up being like at a like a R2 kind of public college, you know what I mean? Working with more kind of like working class students, you know what I mean? And like
Yeah,
students like, that come from where I come from. And I feel like that's where I can make like the best intervention, you know what I mean? And kind of, tap into people's minds and get people thinking about, you know what I mean, about, the things that affect us in a new and kind of productive way, But man, the job market is shot out right now. The Cal States, they just announced like a 5-year hiring freeze. So,
shit.
we'll see. I'm actually applying for a job right now with the college program at San Quentin, um,
Mhm.
which I'm not, they're looking for someone who's more kind of far along, but I'm just kind of, but it's like, but a job like that might be in the horizon for me, like an academic program director working with like a college program that's like going into an institution or something like that. You know what I mean? Various types of director positions. You know what I mean? That with that emphasize, you mean, higher ed for our populations and stuff like that. But yeah, something like that, maybe some type of a more administrative role or something like that, or yeah, stick on this, you know, end up landing a professor job or something like that. That's the ideal. You mean, that's what I came into this for. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, you said you would get your PhD and you're on your way. So I don't doubt that you'll get that the next step too, man.
Yeah.
And before we wrap it up, is there anything else you wanted to say?
Um. Nah. No, I don't think so, man. I feel like I touched it all. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to chop it up with us. You have a very inspiring story, and I wish you the best success. And like I said, you went in there saying you were gonna do something, you did it, and so I wouldn't doubt that the next stage of your life you're gonna accomplish the goals that you set, man. So much love. Appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me on.
And with that, we out.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.